A new study published in Antiquity and led by researchers from University College Dublin in collaboration with the University of York has called into question the notion that Neolithic Ireland was ruled by an elite class of god kings who practised incest. The research casts fresh doubt on long-standing interpretations of DNA evidence from the iconic Newgrange passage tomb, suggesting instead that these prehistoric societies were far more collective and egalitarian than previously thought. The controversy originated in 2020 when genetic analysis of a skull fragment known as NG10, found in the inner recess of Newgrange, revealed a striking conclusion. The individual was the offspring of a first-degree incestuous relationship, either between siblings or a parent and child. Along with evidence that this individual was related to others buried in distant passage tombs, the finding provoked comparisons with the inbreed dynasties of ancient Egypt and the Incas. Some have interpreted this as proof of an elite ruling class in Neolithic Ireland, possibly descended from a caste of horned headdress-wearing Mesolithic hunter-gatherers that preceded the Neolithic farmers. However, the new research takes a critical view of this theory. The team emphasised that this solitary case of incest has no parallels in other Neolithic DNA from Ireland or Britain. Study co-author Professor Penny Bickle from the University of York notes that dietary patterns, dwelling types, and the absence of craft production or trade disparities point towards social equality rather than elite stratification. She said the evidence all points to a much more collective ethos. There are not wide disparities in diet, houses are relatively flimsy, and all similar to each other. There are no large settlement systems or trade mechanisms, and we also don't see production of craft on the scale that we see in other ancient societies, such as in ancient Egypt, where incest was thought to be practised by the ruling elite. We can only begin to understand these monuments and tombs if we examine the social lives or the communities that built and used them, and when we start to do this, the idea of a social elite or a form of royalty starts to appear less likely. Similarly, Associate Professor Jessica Smith of University College Dublin explains that the comparison with hierarchical societies is misplaced. We lack any evidence of enduring in-group incest or dynastic conventions in the archaeological record. She said, people were definitely being selected for burial in passage tombs. The whole community does not end up in these monuments. However, we don't know the reasons behind this selection and why they were thought to be special. Unlike today, bodies don't tend to be buried whole or intact in this time period. Before they end up in megalithic monuments, bodies are broken down, sometimes cremated, and even circulated around their communities. The placement of NG10's skull within Newgrange's chamber is itself open to question. The monument has undergone significant disturbance over the centuries, and burials may have been moved or reorganised prior to modern excavation in the 1960s. The study points out that remains from at least 5 individuals were mixed, some cremated, others fragmented, leading to uncertainty about the original layout and selection criteria. While the individual might have held significance for reasons now lost to time, it does not necessarily follow that incest was accepted or systematically practised. Nor does it confirm the existence of a hereditary ruling family. As the study authors note, assertions of god kings rely too heavily on single data points and unsuitable cross-cultural comparisons. The genetic clustering observed via passage tomb burials is more consistent with distant kinship, such as second or third cousins, rather than immediate family ties typical of dynastic lineages. Moreover, the burial practices in Neolithic Ireland offer further insights. Community members were often interred in group tombs, with remains circulated, broken down or cremated, suggesting ritual behaviours unconnected to aristocratic burial rites. The researchers argued that these monuments reflect collective memory, social relationships and shared cultural identity, rather than expressions of wealth or power. Ultimately, the new findings could reshape our understanding of Neolithic Ireland. The image of incestuous rulers consolidating power within the Boyne Valley is potentially supplanted by one of a communal farming society that, while selective in its rituals and burials, did not possess the hallmarks of rigid hierarchy. Although personally I find it hard to believe that some form of labour organisation and social hierarchy was not present simply on a practical level. These monuments would require intensive and organised working groups with a central plan to construct after all. And while the leaders may not have been the fabled Mesolithic hunter-descended God Kings, the idea of a Stone Age communitarian autonomous collective is, to me at least, pretty far-fetched. However, going back to the study, Professor Bickle stresses that without corroborating evidence of economic or social inequality, the notion of royal elites remains unsubstantiated. In calling for a holistic approach to prehistoric archaeology, one that integrates genetic, archaeological and environmental data, the research advocates for moving beyond sensationalist headlines. It urges us to see Neolithic monuments not as palaces of kings, but as shared spaces of remembrance and ritual. But as I said, all these things do not discount strong social hierarchy or leadership. There is more work to do here. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and most importantly subscribe. And you can also support the channel on Subscribestar via the link in the description, or via YouTube Super Thanks. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.